All right, traders, I'm going to be giving you an updated price action analysis on two stocks that ended up gapping up and exploding today and are currently forming the same technical price action analysis pattern. So I'm going to walk you through the bull side and I'm going to walk you through the bear side. This is going to give you a better understanding that, say if this key level reacts as a resistance level and it's struggling to break out, this is how far the stocks are going to crash to. Say this key level is reacting as a support level and it's starting to break out, this is how high the stock's going to go to next. It's going to give you that key in-depth price action analysis on how to determine if the bulls or bears are in control at these key levels. Let's get straight into it. So we're going to be going over DWAC, DWAC stock, and we're also going to be going over VERU. So check out the patterns, man. The patterns are literally identical on these. DWAC and VERU had a massive gap up on the daily chart. Each one of these candlesticks represents 1 day's worth of price action on the daily chart. And both of them had two gaps that were waiting to fill above, and they both started reversing at the second gap. There was a gap to fill on DWAC right here at 27.52, and then there was a higher gap at 29.42, which is where it started to top out and have a short-term micro reversal and form some resistance, right, on that second higher gap. And the same pattern for VERU. VERU ended up gapping up. There was a gap to fill above right here at 14.28, and then it topped out at 15.16. At this second gap right here, it started topping out, right? So it's the same overall pattern for the two. So what are they doing? They're having massive gap ups to the upside. They're filling gaps that are waiting to fill above, and they top out at the higher gap at the higher gap. So this is the reality of the situation, speaking for the micro, speaking for the short-term price action, right? I want you to understand we are truly at make it or break it. For these stocks to continue to run, to continue to act bullish, to continue to show signs of strength and not come back down to start to fill these gaps below within some times, they need to turn these gaps into support level, and they really need to turn the higher one into support. So for DWAC, $29.42 right here, that needs to break out and react as a support level. If it can do that, that means true strength. Bulls are going to be in control and they're going to remain in control. And it will be on track to go to the next resistance level, which is going to be towards $32 to $33.50 a share on the daily chart. And then if it breaks above $33.50, this is more macro perspective, but if it breaks above $33.50, then it's just going to really start to run. It's going to really start to run to start to fill this higher gap at 43.79, which would be the best price to short and buy put options on this stock. But if it can break above 33.50, this is speaking for the macro, the longer term price action. So we're going over micro and macro. It's going to really start to break out and go bullish. But that's what you need to understand. We are at true make it or break it. That's the bull theory. Now let's discuss the bear theory and let's discuss this overall daily chart. So what is DWAC doing? Well, if you look at DWAC, it's pushing for new 52-week lows, and it just had an overreaction gap up to the upside. It did close fairly strong. However, this is truly make it or break. This is previous overall support on the daily, this $29.40. There's also a gap to fill right here. It's been reversing since it hit this level, and you got massive downside potential. Within just a couple days, it sold off to $23. In a couple of weeks, it sold off to $15, right? So overall, if it tops out, right, if this starts topping out at $29 and it cannot break out, the bears are going to take it to this gap right here. They're going to take it to 27.50. If 27.50 cracks, then within some time, like about 1 week to 2 weeks, we should be on track to test this $21.97. But that's what you need to understand in terms of bullish and bearish theory. We have a lot of resistance at this $30 a share. It had a massive pullback to $20. It retested, and it is still failing to turn this resistance, that previous support on the daily, and that gap into support. It is true make or break. If they can't do it, you're going to see a very nice sell-off, right? In terms of where it bounced off that 21, right off that previous resistance on the daily. So you can pay attention to that. But if you ever see it go under 21, That is super bearish, and then it's going to go back down to fill the gap. So you have a gap to fill below at 1748, and you have another gap to fill below at 1633. One thing we do know about DWAC is it's consistently pushing for new 52-week lows. And there's gaps to fill below, and it has filled the gaps above, and it's showing signs of reversal and already had massive pullbacks at those key levels. So we'll see. In a sense, this is giving like MULN type of vibes based off this chart. Like MULN, it had this previous support on the daily right here. We called this crash out perfectly in my previous videos. Previous support on the daily was at 50 cents. It had a massive sell-off to 21 cents, dropping over like 60%, rocketed back up to previous support. We identified that it was resistance on the daily, red bearish candlesticks, red bearish candlesticks. If you see red bearish candlesticks on DWAC or VERU, that's how you can confirm that it's gonna, reverse and crash back down a bit within the next 1 to 2 weeks, these bearish daily candlesticks. And then it just sold back off to start to go back down to fill the gaps that are waiting to fill below towards the lows. So just pay attention to these patterns because DWAC is attempting to do the same thing here. But it hasn't formed that bearish daily candlestick on the daily chart yet. So in terms of VERU is the same exact pattern. And they both fairly closed, fairly towards the highs. DWAC closed a lot stronger than VERU, but we're in a micro channel for this VERU stock. The micro channel is going to be right here. We're going to call it this gap. So there's a gap to fill right here. There's a gap to fill right here. We're going to draw 2 lines, gap here, right? So those are your gap zones. The higher one's reacting as a resistance. The one below is attempting to react as a resistance, not confirmed yet. And we're in a little micro channel. The overall micro channel is like your low 16s to, to about 1030s. That's your overall range, right? That's your overall range on VERU. So, just like DWAC, if it tops out at this 1516 gap, the higher gap, if it tops out there, it's going to go to the lower gap at 1428. If they turn the lower gaps into resistance and crack, they flip super bearish, and then it's going to start to fill the gap below. If you were interested in potentially dip buying these for micro scalps, you can set some price alerts at the lower gaps and see how they react. So I'll set a price alert at or below this gap right here at 1065. Obviously, these are going to take quite some time to trigger, but within time they will likely trigger. And like I explained to you the bullish reactions and the bearish reactions. So for VERU, in terms of bullish reactions, it needs to break out and stay above 1518. If it can do that, it goes to 1630. If it breaks above that, then it goes to 1750 to 1790. So that's your upside potential. Now, in terms of downside potential. In terms of downside potential with VERU, if it remains under this 1509, then it's super bearish. If it cracks 1430, it's basically done, and it will be on track within some time to rug pull to fill the gap below at 1035. Once it fills the gap, that's very strong support. We will likely see a gap close reversal. So look for a potential dip buy and reversal around that area. So that is our bull analysis, and that is our bear analysis. That's what you need to understand. They had a massive gap up and moved to the upside. They have filled the gaps. You can see there's a gap right here. It fills the gaps, but it reacted bearish on the daily candle, and then it sold off, right? So we haven't gotten those bearish candlesticks on the daily chart yet, but they have filled the gaps and they have pulled back. So it's going to be fairly interesting to see how these react. If you see it's green and it's breaking out, it's turning the key gap levels into support, then it's going to have another breakout. But if it can't do that, man, this is make or break, and you will see a nice sell-off if they cannot do that. So now you understand the upside potential and the risk involved of holding. Now you understand the downside potential and the risk involved of holding that as well. You now have a better understanding to determine if the bulls or bears are in control. You now have a better understanding on what to look for, the key make it or break it levels. If it reacts as a roof, if it forms resistance, it goes back down to the overall next level that I gave you. If it reacts as support, reacts as a floor, then it goes up to the next overall level that I gave you. You just have to understand this is true make or break, and if they cannot break out and turn it into support, we will be seeing some downside on these stocks. That's my overall thoughts. That's my overall analysis. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned a lot. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. I will keep you up to date on the stocks that you guys are interested in watching, right? I'm going to keep an eye on DWAC and VERU because these correlate with my gap close reversal strategies where stocks fill gaps and then they have reversals. And if they turn those key levels into not reversal levels, then they just keep going in the same direction where they came from, which would be up in this case. So we'll see how they react. But that's what you need to know, and that's what you need to understand. Tune out all the noise. Focus on the price action. Focus on the key levels. Focus on determining, okay, is this key level a roof or is this a floor? Is it resistance? Is it support? Okay, now that I've determined that because I waited waited and I gave it some time to react and I identified it and I confirmed it. Now I'm going to base my trade off of that and not risk a lot, right? So there you go. That's my overall analysis. I hope you enjoyed and learned a lot. I will see you in the next video.